Independence and the rule of law is a very cardinal and important principle for the credibility of the institution. I took this role very seriously. I tried to make sure that in any given circumstances, my only consideration was the evidence and the law. Of course, that doesn't mean that one is insensitive to a situation always that is highly politicized. These are the situations that we work in. In every conflict that we work in, there are political reasons behind it. But when we come in our intervention as a prosecutor, as Office of the Prosecutor, what we need to be concerned about is whether our crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, now aggression, whether our crimes have been committed. And then we try to reach that criteria of gravity of the crimes that are ICC crimes, look at interest of justice, look at those issues before we intervene, so that when we intervene, we are absolutely clear that it is strictly because of our legal mandate that we are intervening. You know, people usually would ask whether there was pressure applied and or whether I was kind of swayed because of pressure. And I always say that there was pressure, definitely. In the various cases, you cannot deny that. But the important thing for me was that that pressure should not make me act or not act. And this is, again, something that I ensured did not happen under my watch. The situations that ICC intervenes to work or exercises jurisdiction are highly politically charged. That's a fact. We cannot deny that. They're highly politically charged, and everyone in that situation is trying to make you see their way and to decide because of this is how they see the conflict, or it's because that's what favors them. Coming to examples, I think now I can cite quite a few examples where people have tried to use pressure, or they have tried to argue away the jurisdiction of the ICC based on politics. If you look at, let's start with the Côte d'Ivoire case. In the Côte d'Ivoire case, the outlook that people had, or the perception that people had, is this is because it's this victor's justice, and that the ICC was only going after those who won the elections. They did not remember that at the time of the ICC intervention, we were very clear that there were going to be the Office of the Prosecutor examining both sides. So from the beginning, there was a Côte d'Ivoire 1 and a Côte d'Ivoire 2. So even though the steps that have been taken in Côte d'Ivoire 2 are not yet visible, for many reasons, they are not yet visible, including resources. There was also the issue of Sudan, Darfur. In Darfur, you saw the African Union having the resolution, coming up with resolution to saying that they will not cooperate with the ICC because of, to arrest Bashir. You also know that there were delegations from the African Union to us, whether it was the Darfur case or the Kenya situation or the Bagbo situation, but African Union took a position. And that position was that ICC is targeting Africa, or African leaders. And for that matter, they tried to apply this pressure on my office and on my person to want to convince me that I should not go after the African leaders. I have tried several times, and my people have tried to explain that I am an African, and what happens on my continent is important for me, that my continent is at peace, and there is security, and there is particularly justice is very important for me. So I would not put the African continent in a position where justice is misplaced. That would not be my role. And for me, I had always explained that I am not doing any of this work because of politics. I am doing it because this is the law. This is what the law has asked me to do. I took an oath as a prosecutor to apply the law strictly, without fear or favor. And this is what I tried to do. But the pressure was there. First, from the African continent, you will not forget the time that there was this movement to have a mass withdrawal from the African continent. Mass withdrawal because they say that ICC is targeting Africa. This was a propaganda, very well oiled, very well made, which the ICC could not even defend because we did not have the resources, we did not have the reach. But it was used so much so that the average African person believed it, believed that we were targeting Africa. We were going after African leaders. So in the end, we had to do a lot of work to explain and to show that this is not because of politics that we were working. When we went outside of the African continent, again, the same pressures were applied, and maybe this time even more violent, if I may put it that way. I have in mind the situation in Palestine. You saw what happened. The situation in Afghanistan. You saw what happened with the Trump executive order and the sanctions that have been placed on the ICC and on my person and other staff of the ICC, that we should not carry out our work. I don't think that any pressure can go even beyond that. I was stopped from going to the US, even to do my legitimate work. My accounts were blocked, and I was not able to even do my day-to-day business with running my office, because I would put, for instance, an American national in trouble if I directly tasked that person, even though they are my staff. So it really did cause a lot of pain for all of us. And as an office, as the ICC, we had to look for ways. It's fortunate that really the NGOs stood up. You know, they really said that this cannot happen. The prosecutor of the ICC cannot be sanctioned. The ICC, as the first independent international criminal court, cannot be sanctioned. And of course, they did their lobbying. States parties also were able to. There are some who did not want to have any part of it, did not want to approach the American government because they would destroy ties with them, or were just too afraid to say anything. But in the end, fortunately, Biden's administration came into office, and then the sanctions were eventually lifted. But it did, I think it also demonstrated the fragility of the court. This is what it was showing. And that it also, I think, to the states parties, it motivated them to know that they created this institution. If they do not defend it, it will collapse. With respect to Israel, in the situation in Palestine, you have heard, it's public. It's really public. I've received public threats and private threats that I should not have or touch this situation, because, you know, I do not need to go into all the details of what is going on there. But for me, what I did from the beginning to the end was just to follow the law and what the law told me. And that it is not only just one person thinking. I had a team. I had people around me. I had outside advisors. So any step that we took was always very well thought through, was always fully justified. But despite the fact I was threatened, there were intimidations that I do not want to go into. I was called anti-Semitic publicly by the former Prime Minister of Israel. And so the pressures are there. And what I have deduced from all of that is that you only need to touch a state party. Once their interests become, once you touch the interest, you know that you can have them against you. Because I believe that no state wants to be scrutinized, especially when it comes to international criminal justice. So they will push back and they will fight back. And these pressures are not just going to go away. They will still continue to be there. Indeed, I did. I think over 3 years or more, I was, in fact, during my biannual report to the UN Security Council, I did say that I'm prioritizing the issue of trafficking. And I have indeed, when I was there, taken steps to do that. I have engaged with various states who were already interested to making sure that the practice stopped, including starting from Libya and various Western countries who were definitely interested. So I made it a point of duty. I had a team that was trying to see how best we can work together with other states that were going to help. In fact, we have spoken about the strategic goal 9, which is now goal 6, and that was engaging various partners to see what can be done. But you have seen the Libya situation. It was a very challenging one, quite challenging. We have been able to bring further arrest warrants. We have also been able to gather a lot of information, which we could not use at the time, but we have submitted it to other partners to look at it. With respect to the migration issue, I wouldn't say that it is only for the national or domestic jurisdiction to deal with it. I think it requires engagement and partnership. I think it requires not only the court itself looking into it, but reaching out to others to see how we can work together for this matter to be dealt with, and that justice will be brought for the migrants who suffer during this period. It's a very serious issue. I've always looked at it as a very serious matter, and I think that collaboration is indeed very, very important to solve the matter. You know, I believe that Africa has played a very big role. And the fact that international criminal justice has really had an impact in Africa. Despite all the criticism and the lack of understanding of the court, I believe it has had an impact in Africa. And I also believe, I've said it several times, that Africa has embraced more the ICC than any other region, really. African States Parties is the largest bloc, the largest regional bloc to ratify the Rome Statute and become state parties. I think the records will show that. So that alone is critically important. Again, when you look at the ICC starting its work, maybe it would have started later, or maybe it would have started in a different way. But the fact that African states took leadership and were referring cases to the ICC, because all this accusation of African bias is because of the fact that many African states have referred their situations to the ICC. I can tell you, as a prosecutor, former prosecutor of the ICC, I can tell you that the cooperation that we received from Africa was more than any cooperation we received from any other part of the world. This is a fact. And if you were to go and look at the records, you will see that this is a fact. In most of the requests that we made to Africa, it will come back positive unless they are not in a position to do so, or unless they are playing a game of pretending to cooperate when they do not. And these are really the exceptions, not the relationship that we have with Africa. So today, I do believe that ICC can continue to have an impact in Africa. I believe that Africa is now poised. They're in a position where they can work more closely with the ICC. I believe that the issue of complementarity is something that has to be explored more deeply, and encouragement and understanding given to most African states, or all of them, that indeed the primary responsibility to investigate and prosecute rests with the state itself. And that what are the ways in which we can look at ICC and states parties or states in Africa, how can we work together? I do not think that it is just one way going. It has to be, it's a two-way street. You know, the collaboration has to be there. The engagement has to be there. And that way, I believe that we can sort out the issue of international criminal justice in a way that is, will be more acceptable, that will be embraced more, and that we can show effectiveness in this work. In most of the states parties, what I observe is, unfortunately, even the legislation that needs to allow them to take up the issue of investigating and prosecuting is not there. Or more needs to be done for them to be able to investigate. So this is an area that we have to look at together. We have to look at and see whether there is it requires an enabling legislation, or they have to start from scratch. So I think this is important. Another area which I believe we need to study together is really knowledge about the system, about how international criminal justice works, or how it can be useful to them. So that requires, again, training to those persons who will be directly dealing with this, the issue of investigating and prosecuting. I think the issue of resources has to be there also. Resources has to be there, and look for ways in which assistance can be given for this issue of training and the legislation to be put in a better shape to handle this situation. And of course, awareness raising. Awareness raising and sensitization is also critically important. We should not forget that. We have to avoid the issue of politicization, because it can really affect the way in which people, especially authorities, in which they can look at criminal prosecution. If accountability is not brought into the picture and justice is done, the perpetrators or would-be perpetrators would not be deterred. The perpetrators will commit again, and those who see that, okay, I can get away from this, would still, would not be deterred from committing these crimes. As I said, it is, for me, always it is the victims that matter. It's the victims of these crimes. They deserve justice, and they are asking for some. I can tell you that many of them have the only hope they have is in the ICC. This is a fact. Many of them have seen this. And if this institution that they trust and hope that it will address their concerns and what has happened to them, if it doesn't work effectively, I think this can even be more destructive. I always say that ICC is not a panacea. I think over the years you've heard me say that all the time. It's not a panacea, and it cannot address every problem. It cannot. Likewise, the ad hoc and the hybrid tribunals. We put them in place. We put them to make them work in different situations, but there must be the encouragement for domestic jurisdictions to also take up that responsibility. And in doing so, also try as much as possible to create this panoply, as you said, of mechanisms that can be used, that when one fails, another can at least work. But what is more important for me is to coordinate. the coordination, to engage with one view, one goal in view, to ensure that justice ends up to be done. We have to really mean it when we say that impunity is not an option. But impunity is not an option can only be realized if we ensure that it is not only one institution that is dealing with this, but there are many institutions or many mechanisms that is in a position to handle this and to handle it effectively, and that there is coordination amongst the different mechanisms. I don't know if I can leave the justice world. I'm not so sure. I think over the years I've explained that it is just something in me. It's innate. And from a very young girl, I just felt that we all have a role to play, and that we must ensure that those who look up to us for justice to be done, we stand up for them. So I don't think, even if I were to go away, I will go very far. So it's there for me. Of course, I am looking towards going back to my country, contributing to national development and to serve. I like to serve. But I'm sure that whatever I'm going to do will not be too far away from justice.